Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OD Consultancy space in our top line as MCVP to Isaac in France. We're gonna wait a couple of minutes to see if someone joins, and if not, we'll get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna explain to you a bit how it's gonna go. We're gonna have first from my side a bit of explanation of how OD is currently working in this entity and what's a bit the history and the fuck-ups that we had. And later on, it will be at the end and space for you guys to have any Q&A if you have any. So, well, to start with, my name is Laura. I'm the current MCVP OD. Yeah, just feel free. I hope you feel free enough to ask me any kind of question you may have. What we're going to be discussing today, I'm going to explain you the current situation of the OD model and the growth paths. We're going to talk about the coaching model, the transition status that we have in the entity, also realities, internal communication, and the biggest struggles that they had. And then, as I was saying, I have the space for Q&A. So, to start with the OD model, so first of all, a bit of OD history in France. We started to have OD here around 3 years ago. So we're very new in that sense. Plus, until last year, the kind of OD model that we had was only measuring operations. So all the clusterization was only based on the number of exchanges. It was divided in terms of performance on winter peak and summer peak. So there was a lot of movements over there, but only in terms of clusterization. Now this year we updated it and we include the measurements of finance and PM. But it's starting to get implemented right now. Why? Because we have two updates during the year of the clusterization of the LCs. The first one is in the middle of summer peak, like at the end of summer peak, sorry, which is like the 31st of July. The 31st of July, yes, and the second one, it happened just right now at the end of January, so at the end of the peaks. What happens that during all these winter peak, the LCs have been clustered based only on operations because the model and that they were following by the 31st of July was only based on operations. Now is the first time in January that they've been updated for first time, as I was saying, in back office in terms of health. Why is that important? Because, first of all, the different time of classes that we have, as you can see, goes from startup that would go expansions, that right now we have only one expansion, then strivers, boosters, mature, innovators. That would be the kind of LC classification that we have, how we measure the development of the LCs. We don't have health index and performance index. Why? Because I was saying this is the first time we're measuring the health, and we saw that the history is very not regular, let's say. So we really need to start from the basics to ensure that the minimum PM processes and financial and legal processes are covered before trying to actually measure the health per se. So during the first semester, okay, I'm gonna go here first. During the first semester, it was kind of distribution that we had on the LC, on the LD model, on the clusterization. This is the part that I was mentioning, that during the first semester, it was measured based on the performance of the previous peak. That's why, we have our top LC, which would be Cienspo, then Itesud, and all the other LCs are in the lowest levels of development. Now, in this new change that we introduced this year, as I was mentioning, where it's not only the personal growth, like the operations that we're measuring, but also development in people management and finance and legal. How do you jump tier from tier, of cluster for cluster? Sorry, you need to achieve all the criteria of tier 4, for example, in order to jump to cluster 3. And then all the criteria of tier 3 in operations, people management, and finance and legal in order to be able to jump to tier 4, and so on and so on. The reason of this, as I was saying, is because both in people management and finance, we need to ensure first a minimum level of sustainability and automatization of the process before trying to do like models a bit more complex. With the last update that we had in January, this is the current situation of the LCs. Not everyone, like nearly no one, arrived to implement the measurements of finance and PM because new thing. So right now, all the LCs are in very low of development. Would be LCs drivers. Disclaimer: there's a big chance that this data is not absolutely true. Why? Because as you probably know, so finance, legal, and PM, the data we collect from there is a lot based on the reporting of the entities. And Isaac and friends, reporting is not one of its fortes. So maybe some of the LCs would be in booster actually, but the reporting was not done, so we cannot take that that conclusion. Regarding the growth path, it was again the first time that that growth path was implemented. As we're talking, as you see, very low number, like LCs very little developed. The growth paths are also absolutely divided. There are growth paths for OGV, for OGT, for OGE, and the same for incoming. IGV and IGT, not IGE because we cannot run IGE here in France. And then there's like for PM and for finance and legal. So it's very, very differentiated for them to be able to focus like in the most basic things. To be absolutely honest, the growth paths still haven't been absolutely implemented. The LCs received monthly reports based on the performance and the suggestions are absolutely the growth paths, but we're going to refresh them in the next couple of weeks and try to push harder for that implementation. The next thing could be regarding the coaching system. This is a very interesting topic. Why? Because during the first quarter, the first month, we tried for the first time what we call the LCD team, local development team, which would be the coaches would be formed, the coaching team would be formed by previous LCPs of the entities. And the reason and the decision is because previous LCPs would not better the reality, and it would be easier for them, and also because like the entity was mostly from outside the entity. To be absolutely honest, that was a huge failure. The implementation channels were very complicated. It brought a very big distance between the LCs and the MC, and not any kind. We didn't had any kind of success, like of performing the LCs. And that made that also get very delayed in terms of education and getting started. In the second quarter, starting in November, MCVs. Model according the EV maturity that each LC has, and what were the forces of contribution that each one of the MCVs could bring to the LC. The model that we follow is mostly based on growth model. So analyzing the current state of the LC, where it needs to go, what are the options, and what are going to be the commitments that we go through. One of the big points of coaching models is the weekly meetings that with each one of the LCs that are following the week meeting system inspired in 4DX. So it's really an accountability system on not only how to discuss the current problems that the LC has, but also what are the extra things that each LCP can bring to the table in order to make the dashboard, the goals of that LC move forward. Because this coaching system is based on the LCPs. And then we have coaching visits, and functional visits. The coaching visits are the ones that are included embedded in the coaching system, and it's once or twice per semester, depending on necessity. During the first semester, we had coaching visits in November, the end of November, beginning of December, in order to try to push a late peak on winter. Now for the second semester, our plan to be in April again to push summer, as a follow-up also of the national conference that we have in next month, during March. To move on, LC realities. Okay, disclaimer, one of the first things that you guys need to know is that the timeline of the office here is follows the MC timeline. What does it mean? The elections happens normally around March of LCPs, and therefore April, May EBs, and June happens a late transition, and then between 1st of July and the 1st of August, all the new EB are supposed to start. So what does it bring you? That there's not aligned processes in terms of the elections, and they're in transition. Also, because here summer, which is like the months of summer per se, are very, very dead. A lot of our membership are from abroad, which brings bigger difficulties in terms of work or transition and education during those months. So yes, what does it mean? Precisely the transition, one of the topics that we were saying, are very, very complicated to manage precisely because of this alignment. One of the reasons that this happens, all the LCs are legally independent, which means they have absolutely freedom to run the process that they want to run. Doesn't matter what the MC suggests or provides. So alignment between LCs is incredibly complicated, which means transitions are handled locally, and that implies that not always the level of the new VPs, once they start the term, as the desired one. That brings us to a very different kind of LCs. We have LCs very developed, with a strong culture and system and very high quality applications that it gets reflected in the results, or LCs well, they don't. We have also LCs very, very tiny that have up to 10 members after recruitment, and with EBs that have been in ISEC around 5 months or even less, or LCs up to 50 members. One of the things that we need also to have into consideration is the pipeline that we have here and the retention rates, and because that affects a lot on the performance of the LCs. Is one of those two things is also one of the biggest struggles that we have. Our retention rate is very, very low. We lose a lot of members along the way, and the pipeline due to university timeline that is most 2 years, like the ISEC life is very, very short, which that means that coming to a leadership position with a very short ISEC life or ISEC experience, plus an else very bad application process, plus very bad handled transition process, comes with an very poor educated, and that's what comes to the poor situation that we have. So we have 17 LCs right now, as I was saying before, and here you can see the performance up to date, like up to this morning of this year. As I was saying, this counts as MC term from the 1st of August in approvals and realizations compared to the same term of the previous year. As we see, We have like 3 main growths in terms of approvals until now, but those are compared to previous year that had like nearly non-existent performance. Yeah, very similar things in realizations. Another thing that you can notice here is we have like a couple of LCs, that they are not doing that bad. And those LCs like Lille, Lyon, Rennes, and Sciences Po, and even we can include in the group Université de Paris, will come into the part of being our most performing LCs. But as you can see towards the previous year, still is quite unstable, and some of them even are dropping. One of the probable reasons are precisely all these transition, summer retention, and pipeline problems that we were mentioning. To sum up a bit, the biggest struggles that we had during the implementation of all these strategies overall, the first one would be a very late timeline for the OT model and the launch of the rewards and recognition that we had. So the update was done, yes, but implementation of the new model, including these back office measurements, was implemented by like beginning of November. Was launched by beginning of November. So that to the timeline, to the operational timeline, is incredibly late, and brings to this new state that I was showing you before of having all the LCs dropped to LC driver, which would be the lowest level of development. One struggle regarding the JD of the MCPOD was that it changed a lot during the year. So it was a very big overload, lack of clarity on the job description per se. For example, like at the beginning, OD was handling the conference cycle, and the agenda manager was handling also the LCP commission. Plus, of course, all the processes, and then they change, so the implementation models, implementation strategies change, and so on and so on. Also, one very big struggle was the implementation of the planning and reframing frameworks in LC. We have a culture, let's say, of not planning, or not everyone seeing the planning and the tracking of the planning as a priority. So it's very left behind. So that implied one thing actually make the planning and following the planning doesn't happen. It's also that now the second semester towards the first semester has been a very big improvement, and we have the LCs like the replannings complete of not have the federation. So that promises some improvements in the next month, because we can actually track those plannings and plan the MC strategies based on them. Another struggle, as I was saying also before, is implementation of the growth paths, but that's very linked to that late timeline for the OD model launch revamp. In terms of the LCs, there is very lack of understanding from the LC perspective of how to focus in products. Even though most of the LCs has a product-focused OGV, not because of that they stop promoting GT, GE, or so we see later that from data analysis, applicants come a bit all over the place with not clear value propositions, not clear global personas, and so on, which obviously that difficults a lot the operational processing of the LCs. One very big problem in OD in general is the lack of trustworthy data, as also was mentioned regarding the OD model pasteurization. Why? Because PM of finance is reporting, and we don't have a culture of reporting accurately, because there is not a mindset of a data-oriented mindset and interpreting that data. how to use useful that data. So it's not seen as something relevant, which means sometimes in terms of coming up with the strategies or conclusions to something, we find ourselves with data that at the same time we know it's not true. So yes. And to finalize, also briefly mentioned before, there is no alignment towards the elections. So everyone does a bit what they want, and the process how they want. They're very like more standard, not standard, but high quality applications where actually the applicant is required to do some research before, but other ones no. So yes, that difficults a lot the mindset on what the new EB arrives to the position. And there is no follow-up on transition, even though there's been until now national tools and so on, very little implementation, very little follow-up, and too much trust on predecessor, let's say, how each LT handles transition on their own way. And also this year, we launched for the first time, that's more PM related, but linked anyways, the NEC, a national educational cycle. And it was very little implemented. It's seen by the local community as something not that useful. So if we link that to the no transition, and we link that to the lack of data, and we link that to not having planning, we can start to understand a bit all that big drop, except those 4 L's that I was mentioning before, through all the entities. So that would be a big presentation. I don't know if there will be any Q&A, like if you guys will have any questions. Okay. So then, okay. So then with that, we're gonna close the space. Thank you very much. I hope everything is clear. And just to finish, I would wish you like good luck for your application, and don't hesitate to contact me if any of you have more questions. Thank you.